Hey, Josh here. In this video, we're going to go over the user authentication process inside of the done template. I have our main site pulled up right here because one thing that does exist on our main pages is when we choose to sign in or sign up on our main site, you're going to see that there's actually a window that pops up from the top to display our sign-in pages. And so the only thing that happens there is when we've chosen to sign in or sign up from our header, it is going to trigger a flow in our Lightbox top panel to allow it to show and pop in from the top. And inside of this panel, we're displaying our user auth main component. And that's what's available as we jump over to the other workspace. If we go to the user authentication, our user auth main component is right here. And so this is what's getting brought in directly to that window that pops in. Another good example of using component-based design. And the reason that we are wanting to reuse that, again, is one, it makes it really easy to visually edit this component here in the studio without it being hidden on that page that's not really displayed unless it's called. But the other scenario is we also reuse it in a couple of different spots. If we go to our app sign in, sign up page, this is the page that is just the /sign up. Or if they navigate to the application, but they're not authenticated as a user, we redirect them to this page. So that same main component is used right here, allowing us to edit it in one spot, never have to worry about it again. So let's dive into the user auth process here. This is almost all out of the box, the same template that most people use whenever they create their first sign in and sign up flow. It's not a full marketing funnel, but it's just simple, create the account and get the authentication process done. So this user auth main page here is a series of 5 different components that, depending on what you click, show and hide the correct one. So if I'm signing in, it's going to automatically choose this. But then if I choose, hey, I need an account, I need to sign up instead, what this does is it runs a flow to show sign up with password. And this is actually referencing a flow on our user auth main component page. So from this page, it says show sign up with password. And what that flow does, it hides all of the other components and shows the sign up with password component instead. And so that's how we create this feeling of all of these ones being visualized here, but used inside of one specific page inside of Builder here. If we go over to sign up, this is where there's a little bit more nuance specifically built into this done template. And before I jump into that, I just want to clarify 2 things. Because the email is all going to be your own API key with SendGrid or your own email provider, I haven't set that up inside of the done template. So if you want to send an email, you'll just need to follow these instructions for when someone does a magic link, or for example, when someone does a password reset, those would need you to set up these email settings here inside of your own application. The important thing to have here is when we do a sign up, there are some things that I wanted to make sure we did for these new accounts as they come into the done template. Some very common things that happen whenever you're having someone sign up for a software is they have default settings. You want to pre-create some records inside of their account so that when they get in the account, they actually have content already for them to engage with or explore. And so there's something that happens here along those lines. And then there's also something that we've built into this process is a data collection structure that allows them to invite users as a user, as an admin, or as a co-owner of their application. So the data collections are set up in a way that allows that permission structure to work in Builder. We've got a bigger overhaul coming to the way data collection permissions and roles work in the coming couple of months. But this is how you'll set it up so that if you wanted specific users to have specific access to records and the ability to share it, they're able to do that this way. So the first thing that we do when we sign up with a password is we disable the button, basically just prevents a double click from doing anything, and then we sign them up with a password. All that is grabbing the login ID from the email field and then the password from the password field. We give it a user tier of 2, and this is the owner tier. So in the system, we have a 0 for just a general user. We have a 1 that is going to be equal to an admin level user inside of an account, and then 2 is the owner of an account record. And you'll see how we use that later on. Once we sign the user up with the password, we now want to sign them in. This feels like an odd step, but it's a really important step because A signup is basically just creating the record of a new user. It's not actually signing them in and saying that this user is authenticated for this session and that's the user that's here. That's what this process does here. So we run the sign in with password immediately after we successfully sign them up. And now from this point on, the builder system, the user authentication table, the client-side application they're on, they know that it's this exact user that is in this browser session. That's the one that's doing this. And so that's really key, specifically for what we're about to talk about next. Once I've signed that user in, I'll create the master owner record. The master owner record is the topmost data collection built inside of the done template that is the owner of all of the other collections underneath it. And it's this specific collection that if we were to ever invite another user as a co-owner of the account with me on this, it's this collection that I actually need to send them an invite to under our record association system. And I need to say they're now an owner and I need to give them permissions to view, access, edit, and invite others to this specific data collection, the specific record in that collection. So I create the master owner record and I am passing in the owner's record ID just to make it easier for me to connect the two. From there, I create our admin level record. So I update the admin level record right there. So the admin level record is built underneath the master record. And I'm carrying, as you can tell, the master owner record ID that I just set in the previous action. I'm now setting it into this one. So I'm creating that connection, clarifying in the builder data system, hey, this specific admin record belongs to that master owner record. And the permissions that are given to that master owner record are going to be passed through to this new admin collection record. That's done by giving the master owner record under settings, making a child collection of it, the admin collection. Throughout this application, we'll see there's basically everything is a child collection of one of these other ones. So our tasks is actually a child collection of our company collection, meaning that you have to have permission, invited access to that company collection to be able to see the tasks associated with that company. And that's how you create security in your data collections and records, because you say the only user that can access this information, or users, they have to have an invite directly to that record. And we check that invite when that user's logged in and authenticated, and we know exactly which user it actually is. So I continue this trend. So I've done the master record, then I do the admin, then I do this company general permissions record where I then pass the same IDs into it. Again, creating the ownership tiers of collection by collection here. And then I create default statuses for the company record. And so statuses inside of this done template are also their own collection. And to do this, I go ahead and I create a variable for open task, for completed project, for completed task, and for open project. And that variable is set to build a custom JSON array that matches the data structure of our task and project statuses collection. So an example here, I'm creating a JSON structure where you've got the bracket, the squiggly bracket, quotes. I name the first key value. By choosing from fields in the builder data collection setup, I'm able to go grab the specific status name field. I do it this way specifically because Builder uses an ID structure for your field name. So when you create this and you want to bulk upload a bunch of different properties into a data collection, the way that you do that is you give each key the ID of the field that you're trying to associate the value with. So status name, I'm giving this status name open. I'm giving the status type of project. I'm giving it an order of 0000001. That's just something that makes it easy to rank them and display them in a specific order later on that you'll see. I give it a specific highlight color right here. And then I have some other more specific things that are set that you'll see later on whenever we get into talking about our tasks and projects setup. So this is what's occurring in each of these different set variable actions. The cool part about this is I just built this one time and then I cloned it and then I simply renamed it for an open task versus a closed or a completed task. And then I was just replicating all the way down. The final step before I actually create these records is I use a additional set variable action to create a default status array. And all that array is, it uses our merge input type, and I merge the variables set in each of these together. In this case, all I'm doing is I'm saying I created one status in each of these 4 variables, and I want to go ahead and combine them all into one array. So one array is just basically the equivalent of a data collection. Basically think of it like if you had an Excel spreadsheet opened, I'm creating the column names are the values I've put here. So the status name, the status type, and then the columns and the rows are the actual other values, the open, project, and I've combined them all into the same sheet, the same database with this action right here. And then I immediately switch to with a wait in between. The waits are really key because all of these have to be done before this can work correctly, and this has to be done before this can work correctly. 99% of the time probably doesn't matter, but if you're doing more complex logic or referring to other flows that were nested, that wait may become more important. And so I have taken my set variable default status array, and I've said I want to create records in our task and project statuses collection. And I'm going to create those records from our default status array. And because I organized our variables here with the specific field names from this collection, I don't have to do any mapping in this create records. It's already pre-mapped in the system so that when this action runs, it is already labeled correctly and puts the right values in the right spot. And the reason that we want to do this goes back to the same reason we just created all these other connected data collections, is because we have limited the default task and project statuses collection. We've limited that to where only the owners of a record can actually create it, and someone who's been invited to have access. And so by creating them inside of this first flow, whenever we first create a brand new account, we're creating records that they themselves are the explicit owners of. So now there's no security issues of having a default collection that they could technically maybe hack to update themselves. You're able to go ahead and have default values that exist for every user as they create their accounts, but there's your actual records that are owned by each of those individual users. They're not like a locked in global status, meaning I can allow them to edit it for their own purposes if they wanted to, without locking them into saying, well, you have to have these 2 default statuses here. So this is a way to allow them to start with those defaults, but then manipulate it and change it however they want later on. So that's what's going on with our create default statuses action here. The final thing before we send the user into the app is we update the user that just signed up with the IDs of all the records that we just created. So our master owner record, our admin record, our company permissions collection. As we created those records, we stored those IDs in variables, which is inside of each of those individual actions. And we're running an action to just update this user record so it's all those IDs are available by that user at any time. Makes it really easy for us to reference those IDs if we ever need to when that user is authenticated and logged in. The final thing that you'll see is we redirect to the app, and that's a simple action, open page into browser tab window. We open it into the current tab /app. Now the one thing that we do right here though, we do have $new equals yes as something that we put after this route. It's a really important thing because we're sending them to the app homepage. We want to give them a little bit of a welcome. We know they're a brand new user in this case. They're not just like every user logging in. And so this is information that we can use on page load inside of the application so that we know it's a new user and we want to display the welcome process to them. So let's go ahead and demo this. I'll sign up. I'll do Josh plus test today at builder.com. I will do test and click sign up. Now we're creating a few different records here going back and forth. We just created those 3 different records for the master collection all the way through the company collection. We created the default statuses and then we sent them into the application. And again, we used that URL new equals yes at the end of it. as a URL parameter, so that when we loaded the app, we went ahead and said, welcome to done, and let's get your account set up. So we have a mini call to action. If you were doing something more hands-on, you might do a mini tutorial walkthrough or a welcome video. I'm gonna go ahead and hit done for this one and show you, if we go over to settings now, you're seeing these 4 statuses here. Those are the default statuses that were created with open and completed as their values, and a green and a red as their highlights. So that's the sign up and sign in authentication process inside of the done template, what actually occurs when they sign up, some of those records that get created, and a little bit of introduction into how we authenticate and secure the data records through these relationship data collections that we'll dive into deeper here in a little bit.